Good morning. It's Sunday morning. We're drinking coffee and we're talking about rock and roll and helping you create your rock and roll, because that's what this is all about. Is encouraging you and my amazing clan tribe, for which I am proudly a part of, that are here, and we're going to talk about making music and art and encouraging and shit like that. I have some announcements to make. The first piece of announcement I want to make is every Sunday here at this time, join us. Boom, on Angelspit's Twitch. Follow that damn Twitch so you can always be privy to the madness, because there's heaps going on. At least I'm trying to make heaps going on. Join Angelspit's Patreon, because Angelspit's Patreon keeps this and so many other things going, and these people are part of my Patreon, and I am blood signed to keep these fuckers going and keep them excited about life and making art. I did a jam the other day called Mind Phased, in which I focused on a mind-blowing module called the Mind Phaser by Hex Inverter. But you can download it for free on the Bandcamp. Usually I charge for them, but this one's free. And to Patreon members, they're always free. And there's heaps of stuff. And I just did a drop, and we were talking about the song. I'm very proud of the song. It's kind of intense. It's like an Angelspit song, but it's very intense. And Bratton Schatz has just released a new single. Go and check it out, called Philanthropy. It's on Bandcamp, and Julius is standing right below me. He's sitting below me. That's the man who has just released this fantasticness. Please go check it out. I've also just helped a band from Istanbul called Els and the Cult release their first single. Their album's coming up really soon, so that's on Bandcamp. Go check it out. And on the subject of crazy music that's non-stop, dark, and 24 hours, MTV TV. You need to follow MTV TV, and I need to get more stickers off you guys as well, because I put them in all my merch packages. MTV TV is amazing, and if you're bored, follow them on Twitch, bookmark it, stream it in the background when you're doing your housework, and if you're in a band and you want to get your stuff played there, send them an email. That's their email, mtvtv@gmail.com. Send it to them, and they will play it. And if you want to help out with hosting or anything else, contact them as well. They're fantastic. Adam is here with the hat, who's drinking his coffee now, and Diana down the bottom is there as well. That's it. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next Saturday. Today we're Carl's attempt at humor there. Thanks for laughing. I do need the encouragement. Today we're going to talk about perfection versus punk, because a lot of us do programmed music, and it's very easy to produce the rock, the punk, the attitude, the grit, the organic life of a track out of a track by overproducing it. So a question is, well, is that okay in the first place because you like that? And the second question is, well, if it's not okay, where's the line? How do you know where to stop? Where are some tricks and stuff where you could even try to start producing energy and life into your tracks? The floor is open. That is the question. Go.
I'll go.
Please.
All right. So most of my stuff starts programmed. And what I'm trying to do there is I'm trying to establish something that the listener can follow. You know, usually I want that to be a tempo, a beat, something that is going to drive them through whatever else is coming. And that's where punk for me comes into play, because I don't think that punk is necessarily polished at all. I don't think it's polished at all. I think that's kind of the point. And so in that regard, I got no problems bringing in all kinds of noisy things, even when it does muddy the mix to some degree. And I'll accept that as a tolerance so long as I can still drive you through it.
Interesting. Thank you, Brett. Adam, I see your hand go.
Well, a couple of quick thoughts. As I lower my hand, there we go. If you are capturing a specific performance, I think you want to, how do I say this? You don't want to fix it in post. Does that make sense? You don't, the less that you are fixing a performance in post, the more punk and it'll sound, the more real and the more raw it will sound. As far as production angles go, if you want it to sound more punk, put it into a smaller room. The rooms that you're going to perform punk in are going to be smaller, bouncier, concrete wall kind of rooms, and if you put it into that kind of room in your mix, that's going to help get that bouncy CBGBs kind of sound. Whereas if you put it in long cavernous reverbs and put in effects that are long delays and that kind of thing, then you're getting more into club music, big room music. And so the production style is going to be very different, where in that case you want things to be very minimal and very clean. So it's a very different approach to producing in different styles of music. But if you're capturing a performance, the less that you fix it in post, the better. If it sounds good, it sounds good.
Excellent. Go ahead.
Kind of on the same topic. I don't know if anyone's been keeping up with Lollapalooza at all, but Limp Bizkit had their performance last night. I just thought, that part of that is it goes to Adam's point in that, when even though that was a really big set, it goes kind of to the point that their live set is able to convey a lot more of that attitude than I think their recording. I think a lot of their recordings get a little bit too polished, and then when you actually see their live set, it's actually more. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. Julius, what you got?
First off, I do like polished music at times when it fits my mood. But if I were to punkify my track, first off, what comes to my mind is using as few chords as possible, because I've heard that punk rock actually just consists of 3 chords, not more. So to keep it simple in songwriting. And what I would do as well, try to humanize certain melodies, as in not just place them in the matrix and let the computer play it, but record it playing yourself, for example.
Awesome. It's interesting that, and if I start rambling, just wave your hand like this. It's very interesting that I am... I'm sorry, do you want me to stop, Mark? It's really interesting that that this is a really big thing that I think is really important in music, especially like computerized music, that it becomes lifeless. And you start with something that's a really cool idea, and by the time it runs through the machine, that is your process, it becomes lifeless. I spend a lot of time putting energy and madness back into things. I will often get a classic drum loop and I will copy and paste. I'll take an imprint of the funk, the groove it's playing, and I will apply that to a whole bunch of things. I will often heavily humanize and groove quantize drum parts, and increasingly I am trying to play things live as often as possible. And the next thing I want to do is I don't want to, because we've talked about Bjork here before, and we've talked about how she will jump around the studio and scream into a 58. That's what I want to start doing. I want to find a... But then, I'm trying to push things to become as punk and as alive and lively as possible. Because in the past, I have endlessly worked to put energy into things. And one fun thing to do is use pitch bend a lot and use it ever so slightly. Like a guitar will always pitch up. Everything will ever so slightly pitch up, and you might even program that into the sound that when you key release, it'll go up. Even not even a semitone, just the tiniest amount. I've talked enough. I will Portamento, Adam. Absolutely, I use Portamento everywhere on every single sound because that's what Bernie Warwell would do, who's my favorite keyboard player I think ever. I think Adam, your hand was up first. Please go.
Yeah, I'm also a huge fan of Portamento, and adjust the knob on the Portamento. It doesn't have to be the same Portamento on every note. If you make lots of little adjustments on the so this is when you get into the when you're drawing your automations and that kind of stuff. If you kind of wibble and wobble that line a little bit and randomize your portamentos, it makes it a little more interesting. Using different lengths of portamento can actually increase energy in a track too. Like if you have longer portamentos earlier in the track and they become more staccato as you go along, it increases energy on that same instrument without changing anything else. But getting back to what you were saying about the funk, man, the funk is all about pockets, and it's all about groove, and it's all about feel. And I really do think that you can get a lot of funk out of electronic music using these humanization techniques. Portamento is one of them, but micro timing is huge. I know I've mentioned before, and I use Reason, of course, and there is a groove computer in Reason that allows you to randomize within parameters your rhythms and your players, and to kind of decide which note it. So it's like, maybe I want this part everybody lands real tight on the 1 because I want that punch up front. But maybe on this other part in the bridge, I want everybody to be synced up more on the 3, so it has a little more ambiguity as it lands into the thing. And I think that's what you got to do, is you got to take those, you got to create those pockets. You have to give everything room enough to breathe, both in its compositional space and in its sort of up and down, I call it up and down frequency space, right? Where it's at in the reverb, we've talked a lot about that, as to where it's placed within the reverb, if it's up front, if it's further back. So creating those pockets is super important, and really making them fit, making the instruments fit in those pockets is super important to the groove. And there was one other thing that I was thinking, and I kind of lost it, but sorry, but it was all about getting the funk, right? Getting the funk and getting that humanization and playing with the micro timing.
Excellent. I'm going to jump in after, thank you, Adam. I'm going to jump in after Alexander.
Yeah, I'm notoriously bad at finishing stuff, but I think for me it works best if I work in a mentality of working while the iron's hot. And usually my stuff turns out the best if I just don't overthink it and just keep on working, and maybe have later a moment of reflection whether it's good or not, or what needs to be improved, but just keep on working in one go and don't think about it. And also, regarding what was said previously, I think it often helps to bring some real-world flavor into machine music, that maybe acoustic samples or playing the notes in manually, I think that can give it much life. Or pitch bend.
Thank you, Alex. I'm told that you always have the snare ever so slightly behind the beat, and the crash should be just before it. I'm not talking like a 16th. I'm talking like a smidge. And if you adjust if you're doing 4 on the floor and you adjust the 3rd kick drum, if you push it slightly back, you'll give it more of a funk. If you push it slightly forward, you'll give it this feeling of moving forward and edginess. And it's interesting that if you just take the 3 off altogether, because, you know, if it's going boom, 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 that's your bottom end's full of stuff. But if you tell your instruments to stay off the 3, it really adds stuff. Like bounce either side of that, you know, on the 16th on either side, dark, you know, sort of. But keep off that 3 because it clatters stuff up. And portamento is fantastic. You know, if you've got a bass line, it might be the first 3 notes hit it exactly, then it might slide up to the next one, then really slowly slide down to the next one. That sort of shit's great fun. And, you know, as the song goes along, increasing the amount of filter, like opening up, find out what your MIDI controller number is on your filter, on that magic knob, and bring it up. And, you know, you don't have to just... another fun thing to do as well is on your hi-hats, or if you've got a 16th sounding synth, don't just increase the filter, also increase the decay time. So it might start as a really sharp little pip, and as in certain parts it might be stretching out a little bit. That's all good fun. Adam, I hear your hand and it's blue.
I was kind of reminded of what I was saying. The idea there being don't overthink it, right? Like, you kind of know when you've landed on it. You know, it just kind of lights up. You know, like that moment where it's like, oh, okay, it just pops, right? It just pops. You kind of like do. Oh, there it is, right? And it pops. That's the moment that you have to sit back and be like, okay, where am I right now so I don't fuck this up? So if you go forward with it, you can get back. You know what I mean? And as far as like tricks, man, we can talk about tricks for energy in the music all over the place, man. I love these things that you're talking about, Carl, and I think the devil really is in the details, and the sort of the more time that you spend. How do I say it? It's like less about mucking about with the engineering. It's like with the engineering of the track, once you've got the recordings and you're like, yes, that fucking pops, that's when it pops, right? That's the recordings. You know, when you're doing the sequencing, and you really get down into those details and you spend that time to do it, that's not overproducing it, that's making it better. Overproducing it is when you like screw it up in your compression, or you know, that kind of stuff. It's like, you know, when you take the life out of it some other way, getting in there and working out the details on the timing and those little things, like opening up a reverb, creating an envelope so that your reverb opens up and then comes back down, and then opens up and then comes back down. That sounds so cool. And you can do that over, you know, 1 bar. You can do it over 4 bars and get different effects. Like, you know, to really bring something, like if you're going up to a chorus, if you're bringing it up in a bridge, opening up that reverb a little bit over 4 bars is like, you just feel it somewhere in here. It's like between your heart and your stomach, you will feel that lift, you know. And of course, we've talked a lot about using noise tricks, right? Like filtering noise, sweeps, up and down sweeps, bass up and down risers, bass drops, you know, all of those kind of things. If you incorporate them subtly into your music, you still get the effect of that lift and that kind of thing. Of course, in electronic music, and we kind of use those. The tricks are really obvious, you know what I mean? It's like the music is built around using those emotional tricks to create compositions, right? But you can use all of those tricks from EDM and from, you know, big beat, like the dudes like Prodigy and all that kind of stuff. Those tricks work the same in any kind of music production, if that makes sense. So if you're making punk rock, you can still use production tricks in that electronic producers use, like what Carl's saying about opening reverbs, tightening tightening hi-hats on one part and opening up hi-hats on another part is something drummers have been doing for forever, where we kind of bounce our hi-hats a lot, and even through one bar we'll be lifting the hi-hat. I'm doing it with my foot down here, lifting the hi-hat a little bit to get that kind of sound, right? And you can do that with electronic music to augment rock and roll. I mean, a lot of what was it that you mentioned, Demon Hate? Was it Limp Bizkit there, right? Like they're a band that incorporated electronics with live instruments an awful lot.
Yeah, no, they straight up have a DJ that is actually quite talented.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. Get a DJ. That's something every band needs to do, is get a turntablist onto your tracks, because I need more work. And but yeah, you know, so where it gets lost, and stop me if you've heard this before or if I'm going too far, but where it gets lost is in that commercial production. Like, it gets too slick, and a lot of that has to do with simply being in too many hands. Like, there is a point at which the expectations of like radio stations and that kind of they supersede the needs of the artist at that point. You know what I mean? Like the loudness factors and all that kind of stuff, because it does have to stand up next to everything else on the radio. And there's also a certain expectation of what it's going to sound like next to other things that are currently, I don't know, popular, currently in vogue. And so I think that's kind of what happens with something like Limp Bizkit, or a lot of the bands in the 90s kind of did that, where they were merging electronics and rock music. And some of them did it really, really effectively, but a lot of the stuff that ended up on the radio had that over squashed.
So just to tie it, pull it back in, is that also one thing to keep an eye out is over compression.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. You can compress the life out of stuff very easily.
Well, and one thing about the live.
Okay, I'm sorry, Brett. I'm gonna throw it to Alex. Do you see the little blue hand? You can put your hand up. Right, don't lose the thought. I just want to throw it to Alex because he's been patiently waiting. Alex, hit me with your rhythm stick.
Oh no, I just wanted to add that also live recording automation can bring much life into a track, and it can be much faster than drawing it in manually. That's all I want to add.
Okay, cool. I'm sorry, Adam, were you done?
I was, but I can jump on to that even a little more and say, like, Carl, you've talked. I'm going to actually open it up to you because you're great at this kind of stuff.
Okay, hold on, just before we do, I want to throw it to Brett.
The only thing I was going to add that you were talking about, where the humanization versus the machine kind of taking over, is add dynamics. That's one thing. Like if it's flat sound all the way through, then obviously add dynamics.
All right, can I just before I throw to you, Adam, Brett, I want to throw you a question, and Seth, you're welcome to join in. Welcome. We're talking about production, and when you say dynamics, obviously that's volume, but do you also use the harder I hit it, the more I open the pitch, the filter? How about the pitch? How about the resonance? Are there other things like or the decay on the sound?
I do. So a lot of things. When I'm going for a more polished sound, I typically try to use more digital instruments, and yes, I will add those things. But a lot of times, what I'm using to bring that punk sound, if you will, are actually just acoustic instruments. So I'll have a beat, for example, that is allowing me to clock myself, and then I'll actually break out a drum and hit it for those sounds. So the harder I hit it, of course, you get that same sort of effect. That's not exactly what you're talking about, but that's kind of how I accomplish that.
If I may, yeah, I ask because the Emaxs have got this wonderful, well, a lot of samplers and synthesizers have this wonderful thing that the harder you hit something, it will change the pitch. And, as you know, the harder you hit a guitar or a drum, you do actually alter the pitch. You not only bring out more harmonics, but the harder you push that skin down, the more that plip is. And you can control a lot of that stuff in samplers, etc. And it's really good to have stuff where the pitch does waver. I might pick up on that after you go, Adam.
Am I on again?
You're on again.
That is so 100% true, man. I mean, from the drumming perspective, going way on back, like the amount of tone that you can get out of a drum by hitting it in different, like a snare drum or whatever, by hitting it in different spots, and like the big 80s rolls, kind of stuff, like getting those fat tom sounds out of it was like very much a matter of hitting it in the right place and having the mic in the right place to get it.
Yeah, and I'll just say, Phil Collins sucks, and In the Air Tonight sucks. I'm kidding. It's just that was obviously In the Air Tonight. Great track.
That was the drum roll.
That was, and it's great. That's. Sorry, I digressed. That's really true, and you know what? Another thing to do is, if you have a riff that's just going on and on and on, like a 2-bar or 4-bar riff that goes through the whole song, as the riff goes on, fuck it up. And that could be adding frequency modulation, like you might have like a 2000 cycle LFO. Just start bringing it in a little tiny bit here and there. Or you might have, if it goes up to the octave, you might, dun 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 dun. You might start that dun. You might have 2 oscillators. One of those oscillators, instead of going up at 1 octave, might go 1 octave and 1/4. So it might slightly go out of tune. So it doesn't, each time it hits it becomes more and more dissonant. Then you bring it back down. That's actually a really fun thing, is when you got a sound that has 2 oscillators, is you control one of the oscillators. You get in there and you rip it up. And then when you start adding things like syncing and stuff like that, when you start syncing them together, they start flying. They go nuts. It's always good fun. That's all I wanted to. That's all I got right now. Does anybody else have something they want to bring up specifically to this? Because there's another question that's sitting in the pipeline.
I like what you were saying about the oscillators, using the oscillators on varying the oscillators. Voltage control is that was something I kind of wanted you to jump on, and you didn't, but you do a lot of stuff with voltage control, using one thing to control another. And earlier you were talking about using the funky drum samples, right? Running the drum samples, right, like the drum pattern into a synthesizer through voltage control can give you some really awesome variation. Like even just in a like monotone by the time you get done with it can be beautiful, syncopated, shining melody.
Thank you, Adam. Eric?
Hello. I was just gonna mention, similar to Brett, my philosophy with things is I do everything. I don't actually program anything I use everything in the box and computer digital. I play all my instruments. Every single thing you hear that I do, I play. And then if usually it's the drums, I'll try to get in the exact time. But everything else, I like having just that human, that's the punk element for me. That human element is just playing everything and keeping that in there. and maybe having the drums or whatever you want on that song specifically to be in perfect time to make it have that polished sound to it, with everything else coming in with the human element. Growing up, I've been playing guitar now for 30 years. I started when I was 10. Still not a great guitar player, but I play. But I grew up in punk rock bands in the 90s, playing shitty dives, and metal bands were my first love. Punk and metal and Nirvana and grunge and all that. And I actually didn't get into more gothic and darker music until I started getting older. So I still have that, I think that punk rock rage in me, that anger, and I think that's what helps make it not so polished and radio sounding, if you will, or whatever, is having that edge, I think, that human element. That's all. Awesome.
Thank you, Eric. Rob.
Yeah, just I know you talked a lot about the music, the instrument production side, but when I think punk, what stands out to me, if you look at the Prodigy, which is like super programmed, or Transmission Vamp, which is totally rock, acoustic, what stands out to me is the aggressive attitude in the vocals, and that's really what you got to maintain, is the integrity of the vocal line. You don't want to muck it up too much because it takes away from the authenticity of the performer. So doing less with the vocals, for me in the past, has been best with respect to punk. That's all.
That's brilliant. Thank you. I want to. I'm always about talking about vocals, but I just want to throw it back. Can I just see a show of hands? When you mix something down, and I'm not talking about mastering, I'm talking about exporting your final mix. How much multi-band compression do you use? Like, do you guys put them into buses and then do you multi-band compress the buses? If you do that, put your hand up. Let me know. Okay. So if you don't do that, put your hand up and let me know. Okay. It's really interesting that I have grown so accustomed to multi-band compressors that I can't hear them anymore. And I can hear them in, like, obviously I can hear the effect of it, but it's become my coffee. I'm speaking really honestly now. And I'm trying very hard. Hold on, I gotta bring my volume down. I'm trying really hard to not rely on them. Because I make the mistake, and I'm sure some of you might too, is that if a song isn't strong, you will produce the shit out of it, compress the shit out of it, add more dumb shit until you don't notice that it's not actually, there's not a strong song under there. Like if I have a song that's really fucking good, I can look at my drafts and it's like draft 5 or 6 or something, but all those other songs they're not really there, they make it into draft 10. And if the song's a turd, it's draft 15. And I'm still going at it because ultimately the bass sucks, the drums suck, the vocals suck, and what is going on sucks. Oh, I shouldn't say sucks, it's just not strong. And it's difficult because you're so eager to get the song done and you've only got so much time. It's difficult to pull yourself back and say, this isn't strong. Excuse me. And that then gets into another issue of confidence. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that I'm prattling, forgive me. Is that I'm me personally, I am really trying to use a lot less dastardly compression, like, oh, that's fucking compressed, except on the voice, because I think you compress the fuck out of the voice. I think you have to. But as far as everything else goes, like, I'm trying so hard to calm down on compression and calm down on multi-band compression, because everything I do goes into a bus, then I multi-band compress the bus. And I'm trying, I've got the best mastering guy money can fucking buy, and I've got to just start letting him do what he is incredible at, and that is, you know, I think that's the problem with Isotope and so many of these multi-band compression things, is that they are creating a taste of sameness across so many tracks. And because, you know, so many tracks are losing their individuality because they're all getting these similar compression presets put onto them. I'm speaking on behalf of myself now. I'm not projecting that onto anyone else. Sometimes I think if I just got rid of every plugin on my computer, it would be the best thing to ever happen to me, because I would be forced to, you know, okay, I'm done. Adam, I think you're first, and then I'm looking at you, Eric. Eric's first. Eric, the floor's yours.
Well, thank you. Just to add on to what you were saying, Carl, doing just with what you were asking, I compress every. If I do use compression, it's individual. I don't use bus compression. Maybe on drum kits, sometimes if the snare and everything is a little off, I'll try to get that a little more even. Outside of vocals, I don't compress any instruments unless they really need it. I feel your instrument selection and the way you put a song together, if you have all of that going really well, I feel you don't need to compress or do any EQing, unless it's muddy or like obviously to fix things. But the mastering process is where all that magic that glues everything together comes from. And if you can export your track without compression, without EQing a lot of the instruments, and it still sounds really good, that's excellent. That's the less you have to do in post, and even using compression or whatever in post, the better your song's going to sound and the better overall it's going to be. Like I said, outside of vocals need compression. Vocals definitely need EQ and compression to make them sound professional. But everything else, I think, as long as you have a good instrument selection and investing in instruments over effects is way more important.
Awesome, go. I'm just going to stop. You've really... I just wrote myself a note saying I have to take multi-band compression off. I've got to do it. Because I booked my mastering guy like today, and I always pay him in advance because it's like I'm fucking doing it. And I've known this guy for like, 20 years, and he's, I'll pay me in a month or two because it's a lot of fucking money. But it's like, no, I'm paying you now because there is a deadline and I have to make this. I am doing it. I'm taking off multi-band. And if I don't, you guys have to send me a poo in the mail. Thank you, Eric. Adam.
Does it have to be human?
No. And bunny rabbit, whatever. But send me that poo. Adam.
Like, I'll go clean the cat box in preparation. Yeah, so my process fairly similar, a little bit different, I guess. I do use compression on buses. I tend to bus. I will bus drums together, right? And use some compression, but I'll leave the kick outside of that bus or something like that. So there like I want a different compression on my kick than I want on everything else, kind of thing. So like I'm kind of gluing the highs together, so like the cymbals all go into a bus. If I'm using toms, maybe it'll go in the bus with the cymbals, but like I want to compress the kick drum with one setting, and I want to compress the other thing though is that I find it's more effective to like route as an effect change. So like you can add a little bit of compression on any given channel, but you can dial in how much compression on the same compressor. You know what I mean by running it as
almost a wet dry mix.
Yeah. Well, exactly like a wet dry mix. But it's like you set all the compression settings on this instance of the compressor, right? And then everything that you send from auxiliary 3 goes through that setting and then comes back into the mixer. So it's just how much of it goes through auxiliary 3 or whatever it is to go through those compressors.
What do you use that on?
And-
what instruments?
Sorry?
What instruments do you use that on?
I use it a lot. Well, so again, I'm using it more on each instrument, and I will be like, this compressor is for the drums, right? For like, I'll use this on all the cymbals because, you know, I might use like 7 different cymbal samples or something like that, and like a few of them I really want to glue together in a certain way or whatever, so I use more, you know, because if I hit these 2 cymbals together and glue them together, it sounds like a whole different cymbal, you know. So and I will definitely use it a lot on like, you know, arpeggiated keyboards and that kind of stuff. You know, so the way that I do my bussing is that I will have like percussion bus, I will have like a bass bus, I will have like an effects bus, and that's kind of like anything that I'm doing with like white noise treatments and that kind of stuff. And I will have compression in the chain there somewhere, but I'm just using tiny amounts of it. And what I'm doing in my mixing stage, right, is I'm using compression for effect, if that makes sense. It's like I'm using the effect of compression, because like in electronic music, a lot of times we use compression to make a sound. Like New York compression is a way of mixing a compressed, super compressed kick drum with an uncompressed kick drum to get that sound of the, like, to get a whole different sound out of the 2 of those things being combined. And so compression can be used strictly as an effect. And in fact, every time that you run effects on something, you're compressing it a little bit. Like if you're running everything through a reverb for your you know, your total room reverb on your mix, it's all getting compressed a little bit. It depends on how much you're sending through to it and what happens to it after, right? The whole thing about sending, like, so when you finish your mix down, right, like if you've used compression for effects in your mix down and it's not, you know, if it's not taking the life out of the instruments, you've used it for effect well. When you get to the end of the mix down, what I always do is I will have a global compression that is basically mastering sort of settings. I will have like a little setup, so it has mastering, EQ, and compression, and a little bit of stereo imaging, whatever, a little bit of sizzler, you know, what you call exciter or something maybe in it, you know, so that I can get an idea just by hitting one button on the SSL, the virtual SSL. I can hit one button on there and get an idea of what it's going to sound like when everything's compressed and everything's going through a global EQ, you know, with the tops and bottoms cut the way I want them to, or boosted the way I want it to, in the middle, you know, where I want the vocals to be a little cleaner, boosted up a little bit, you know, just to get kind of a general idea of what it's going to sound like before going to the mastering. So you click it on, you hear what it sounds like, and you're like, okay, that sounds fat. But here's the thing, is never do your mix down with those settings. Only go to that to listen to it so you can see what you need to fix in the mix. Turn it back off, go back in, fix that thing in the mix, turn it on, listen to it again. Turn it off, go back in, fix that thing in the mix. And then when you export that, you know, that final product with no compression, you don't want all that global stuff on it, right? That's when you want to let it go to whoever's doing your mastering. If you're doing it, you're going to probably use either a different program or a different set of, you know, it's like, because you're going from a waveform, you're not mastering it from like 30 tracks or whatever, you're mastering it from left and right. So at that point, that's when the global compression and the global equalization and the global loudness stuff all happens. You know, I know everybody's gonna have their kind of like, I like it at -10, I like it at -6, you know, but somewhere between -10 and -6 on your final output is gonna give the engineer enough room to compress without distortion and that kind of stuff. and that's and what you really want in the final master is to have that be very, you know, transparent. You don't want it to sound like it's compressed, but you want it to be loud, and you want it to be loud in the right places. That's where the multi-band compression can be really useful, although I am not very good at multi-band compression, and I rely more on EQs and you know, on using basically two different types of compression, which is, you know, the bottom up compression and then the top down compression, you know, the limiting.
Thank you, Adam. Brett, what you got?
Yeah, so I wanted to kind of, I guess, say that in terms of how I end up using multi-band compression, I use it where I end up bussing stuff and bussing that, and then applying multi-band. That typically is the stuff that I'm already adding that is more environmental. You know, so previously I would do these things to samples and whatnot. Now that I'm not using as many of those preset samples, you know, I'm doing other things that still fit within that realm. And because I want them to generally have the same quality, a lot of times, I'll take them and put them in there. I'll let the multi-band compressor rip out all the frequencies I don't want anyway, because they're already used up. Then, really outside of vocals, I'm not doing, and I will even say there again, so I typically record myself clean at, you know, pretty low volumes. I mean, not you know, basically I'm trying not to peak anything. And then what I'll do is I'll take that and I'll send it to a bus. So that way, anything I want to do to that vocal track beyond that is an addition and whatever. The original is always still present and maybe not even audible. But so you figure that first one comes in, I'll multi-band compress it so that you have that clean sound. But then I'm often sending that off into at least two other buses. And that's where I start introducing effects to the voice that are not just for the sake of bringing up the volumes or cleaning up frequencies. For instruments, that's a bit different. It's much like Adam was saying with the New York compression. I will often take multiple bass drums that are hitting at the same time, and I'll do exactly what he was talking about. I'll compress one to the point in which I'm just isolating that sound of it. But then I'll need, you know, the higher click from an actual one. So that gets in there, and then I'll cut out the sound of it. And what ends up happening is I end up having that on its own channel, because by the time I'm done to it, it usually has more energy than anything else coming in the mix. So I want it way down so you can hear the important parts of it and it can do its job. But yeah, that's about it. Other than that, when I get to my mix downs going to mastering, again, that's something that I kind of learned from you guys and whatnot. I'm not doing a whole lot there. Usually, like when y'all first hear those drafts and such, there's no mastering done. It's not until I actually have those ready to go for real that I actually send them off and then put them on an album typically.
Cool. Thank you. So Adam has put in the question that he's interested in asking what y'all use for compression ratios for vocals. So if anybody wants to throw in on that one, I'll start. When I get a vocal track, the first thing I do is suck out everything under 50 cycles. Second thing I do, because if you got 50 cycles in your voice, you got problems, I'll then normalize that, and I will then add pretty tough compression, maybe 3:1 with a fast attack or note attack and a kind of a medium 50 millisecond decay. Maybe 3:1 at 9 dB. So I go in for the kill on those initial tracks. then that goes, and that's the WAV file. That's not in the software. That's the WAV file. That gets saved and stamped onto the WAV file. I actually do that for a lot of stuff. Then I will go through and usually it's about the same. It might even be a little more. I might go 2:1 at -18 or 2:1 with a really soft knee. But it sort of depends. But my genuine thing is crush vocals. I know people who will pass them through 3 compression chains, so it's just there. Yeah. And that's why I usually end up multi-banding compressing or compressing the shit out of everything, because it's got to keep up. But in doing so, I'm running the risk of losing the punk of it, because I'm diving into the production too much to go into what I was saying before, which this whole thing's all about. What I just said didn't make sense, but I don't care. Who else wants to talk? Don't fucking tumbleweed me, bitches. Go. Alexander, what do you got?
Well, I'm not the best at mixing, but one thing I think is really also maybe not important but handy, that you can, in synthesizers, of course, control the dynamics directly on the synth. So you maybe can think what you want to do and then preset it, already set it up on the synthesizer before you record it, so you don't have to adjust the dynamics later. I hate mixing, so I try to solve the problems previously. So yeah, that's my solution.
Cool. Julius.
Maybe some of you remember that time when I asked you about recording my vocals, and I told you that I rather whisper into the microphone than just sing. So yeah, so I compress my voice a lot. I can't tell any numbers because I haven't done it very often yet, but I think I use up to 3 compressors in the chain, so quite a lot.
Cool. Very cool. Seth, you're welcome. You got your little hand that you can put up if you want to dive in at any point. Either wave your hand on the screen or click your little hand. Because, you know.
I'm just listening right now.
All right.
I mean, honestly, I don't have a lot to say.
All right. I feel that unless anybody... Oh, Rob, please, go.
Yeah, I don't typically do blanket compression on vocals. I'll work it individually, and I'll analyze the parts of the song where the vocalist is really needing to break through versus where it's going to be kind of drowned out a little bit in the rhythm. And doing the analysis with the EQ is really important, just to get that separation. And where I see that the compression is needed, because their microphone technique makes a big difference. If they're too close to the microphone and even the pop filter is not working, you know, that's where I go to work on that section. So there's very rarely a case where I would apply it across the board, because I'm trying to keep it as real as possible. And I focus on the vocalist's microphone technique most importantly, because it's like I said before, you invest in the instrument, not in the plugins. So if you get a good quality recording of the vocalist down pat, you shouldn't need to do a lot more to it. It's that then you've got to work it into the mix and get those levels where they need to be throughout the song. So I don't typically apply a blanket compression across the board. A lot of the artists that I work with are very different, and a lot of them are good with microphone technique. There's a ton of them that aren't, and that's where I spend a lot of time, is trying to make that work.
Thank you. Adam, go.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question for you, Robin. Thank you so much for chiming in on that. So briefly in my process, I did a little bit differently than that, in that, like, I did chop my pieces into pieces so that I could then process different parts of it. So like in this part where it's quieter, like where I'm whispering a line, obviously I'm adding more compression to that part and then putting it back into the mix, right? But what I'm going to ask you is when you're doing this in your workstation, are you doing that as automations, or are you using different instances of compressors and like chopping up so that you have like, okay, this bridge is on track 4 and it's using this compressor 3, and this one is on track 7 and it's using, like, this chorus is on track 7 and it's using compressor 14 or whatever it is, you know what I mean? Like, are you using more automations, or are you using different instances to do that?
I'm using automation because I want to protect the integrity of the original track. Because what I do is I will play the original track through, and then I'll, just the audio, then I'll play the automation through, then I'll play it with the mix for both. And I'm listening for what sounds good and what sounds shit. And I want to keep a reference between the two. I'm not saving off multiple versions with effects.
Okay, so basically you're using the automation to do the knob twisting that you would do if you were doing it all. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you so much, dude. That is really fantastic info. That really is great to get a peek into that process. Thanks.
Cool. Eric.
To jump in what Aussie Rob was saying, I also like, and I've actually learned this over the last year. I've gotten way better at this and not as lazy. But I believe automation is way more important than compression and limiting as well. And like Rob said too, I don't have a blanket vocal compressing. I have a chain I use, which is an EQ, a compressor, a limiter, and then reverb, and that's all I use on my vocals. And I have that set as a vocal chain that I put on all of my vocals, and then I go in and I'll adjust it accordingly to how that track, or how I sang or whispered or screamed in that track. All those numbers are going to adjust to make it sound good. But before doing any of that, and I don't use automation, I go in and I do it the manual. I hate doing it. It's the most tedious thing in the world. But I go in and I will just loop the one part of vocal over and over, and I'll chop the shit out of it. And I will eliminate all the space in it that doesn't need to be there. And then I'll go in individually. If I spike on a vocal at some point and it's louder, I'll go in and cut that, and I'll drop that down. So I manually automate all my vocal tracks. And I find if you have a nice even, and keeping, like Rob said too, the integrity of that vocal track, having that, and then having a nice level, still keep the dynamics in there, but having a nice level vocal track, you don't have to compress and limit it as much either, because you're doing that already. That's what compression and limiting does. You're bringing lows and highs and trying to squash it and make it sound consistent. But if you do that with the track itself before even touching it, I personally think it sounds better. And using the compression and limiting as a tool instead of a thing to fix something, if that makes sense.
Follow-up question. So that's waveform surgery? So like going in and like, zooming in and you're like, okay, there's a clip here, so take that clip and bring it down. Or are you talking about doing that on like a whole passage, or more like zooming into like being like, okay, I'm looking at like, here's one syllable basically, and this little spot here has the peak, so kind of like that?
Yep. Yeah, the surgery. Yeah, I cut it up and like any kind of peaks I bring down.
Definitely guilty of doing that a bit myself. I don't cut it though, because, well, I guess if I do it in Audacity, you can like literally grab the thing and just kind of, without cutting it, you can just select it and kind of lower the, so if it's like, oh, I've got a spike here, right? So it'll, in the, whatever it is, like the fucking lip ring hit my tooth or something, get a little pop spike or whatever, it can just kind of take it and be like, okay, -6.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. I get where you're going with that. I understand. Thank you.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thanks all. If anybody else has questions or they want to jump in, otherwise, Julius has another question.
Yes, I wanted to talk about genre-specific keys in music. I don't know much about music theory, so maybe some of you can give a few examples. And I was wondering, especially for industrial music and darkwave music, like, are there keys you use often in these genres, or do you just do whatever sounds good to you?
Okay, if I can, I've got a oh, you bastard, come back. Ah, tits. Hold on, I just lost it. I've got a thing on my phone which is all the frequencies, and some people like to tune their kick, and that's great. I don't, because I think an untuned kick has more energy and madness. So D is 36 cycles. So if you've got your sub bass hitting out a D at 36 cycles, not much is going to be able to play that. You're going to have a good pair of headphones. Not many speakers will play that. Your car might. Buds won't. They'll pretend they can, but they can't. And if your kick drum is tuned to a D all the way down there, ain't much is going to be playing that. And if you're going 4 on the floor, you're going to ruin your mix because you are pumping so much energy into the subs. And that's why I don't tune my kick, because it's crazy. An octave above that is 73. 73 cycles is a bit better, so that's D an octave higher. And that's okay, sure. I'll let you get away with a D. C is 65, and that's very fucking deep. In fact, everything I just said about D 36, forget it. I fucked up. I looked at the wrong octave. So 73 is still very, very low. Remember that a fridge hums at about 50, and about 50 is an A. So if you have a kick that's down at 50A, you're not going to hear it. If you have a kick that is tuned to 50, A, an octave higher, which is like 110, it's not going to be very deep, because 110 isn't much of a thumping sub. It's low, but it's not a thumper. I actually think E or F is really good, because that's like 80. So I'm talking a whole bunch of numbers here, and it's like, who gives a fuck? But it's important to actually stand back. It's important to actually stand back if you're going to be tuning your kick, as some genres require that, and also your sub. That when it goes bam and hits that sub note, if it's too low, it's going to get lost. I try to do stuff in F because it's a really good balance. I had something else to say, but I just totally forgot. And the other thing to remember is, what does your voice do? If you sing, how high can you sing? Because like if you're in F, I can hit an F, I can hit a G, I can hit an A flat, then it starts getting bad BGs. I used to be able to hit a C in my youth. But yeah, that's another thing to consider, that, singing. But if you don't sing, don't worry about it. Adam. Eric.
Sorry, I just almost lost my train of thought. What Carl said, I also do. I don't ever tune my kick drum. I've started messing with 808s over the actually this new music project I'm doing. I usually always play bass. This is going to be different. So the 808s will take care of if you want to stay in tune with the bass and still have that going with it and still have that untuned kick. I write, and this changes. It depends on the song, but 90% of stuff I write's in C, and not a higher C. I don't sing very well. Like, I sing decently. So for me, singing in a major scale, and I don't know music theory either, Julius. I play by ear and self-taught and dabble, whatever sounds good, I go with. But singing in like a C or D or F, like that major key is so much easier for me, just because I can hit that and just stay within there. And like Carl was saying too, how you sing, and I think your vocals, especially being not in a band, us doing this individually, is more important of how are you going to sing this song, or what are you going for in the song, and write it in it. But I write the majority in C. The second is D, and why is that, Carl?
Because it's the saddest key of all.
So yeah, that would be my second. I write some stuff in D as well, but I stick with C for mostly everything. And it's also coming from maybe a background in playing guitar. I always played in drop C on my guitar. It was drop D and then down a whole step. So I was always accustomed to hitting that open top 3 strings and having that low C hit with what you're doing. And it always sounded evil and dark. I liked it. So I stuck with it.
Thanks.
And one more thing, after we go through our stuff, Julius, I would like to hear you on this too.
Adam.
Okay, well, I'm one of the cats that I do tune my drums. I tune my drums when I play it on a drum kit, but I'm not necessarily tuning them to a note. I'm tuning them to the resonance that works for the shell. And so when I'm doing electronic music, I'm not tuning it for the note. I'm tuning it for the resonance that works well with the instruments around it. And so the other that we were talking about layering a few minutes ago with the layering kicks, and even mentioning 808s. So like to get the sub out of it, sine waves are fantastic, right? They don't have a lot of so if when you're using a sine wave that low, it doesn't have a lot of
Harmonics.
Yeah, it doesn't have a lot of harmonics. So using a sine wave and then mixing that with with some harmonic enhancers, exciters, that kind of thing is pretty cool. We talked once before about Waves has a plugin that's called Bass Max, and it's really cool because what it does is it creates the artificial harmonics for those ultra low frequencies, so that your earbuds can actually sound like they're playing stuff that it doesn't even exist. The bottom frequencies don't even exist, but the harmonics do, so it tricks your brain into thinking that they do, and that's pretty great. If you want a good example of that, listen to my track Sour Diesel. I used it on that, and you can really hear you can really feel it in your parts. The tuning the drum, the different layers of the drum. So way up on top of the drum. So this comes from kind of doing the club DJing thing and all that kind of stuff, is that you have kind of a few different things that you want to feel in the drum, in just the drum, right? And there's that like diff, right, which is the beater sound hitting the head of the drum, that biff kind of sound. You have to have that there because that's the punch. That's the thing that punches you in the face every time the drum goes off. You want to feel it like, right? And then you have the lower frequencies that are like hitting you here, and then you have the sub frequencies that are hitting you here.
What are those frequencies?
All of those layers. So what are those frequencies? They're like your sub frequencies are the ones that you were just talking about, and that's the stuff that you play around with a sine and you get really cool stuff. The middle frequencies are about the chest frequency is the octave above that, and the punch frequency is the octave above that.
Okay. That's excellent. Yeah. Word of advice with sines is they get very loud very quickly because you can't hear them.
A lot of pressure.
Yeah, so just keep an eye on your dials. That's
why the harmonic using it to create harmonics is the trick there that I'm trying to express. Not trying to because you can use the signs to make beautiful basses, to get bass tones that are octaves higher, you know, doom doom doom, those bell tones. But when you do use them low, it's more about getting the harmonics off of it, and that's the hard part. That's where you use the distortion, the exciters, that kind of thing, so that you're basically compressing the shit out of the sine waves, so that you're not, because at that low, it's a lot of bass pressure. It's like you have to be, as you say, you have to be very careful. You have to really carve it out.
Fantastic. Julius, what do you got? Thank you, Adam.
Responding to my own question and to Eric's as well.
That's the equivalent of talking to yourself.
I do it all the time. I mostly start with D sharp, coming from the metal genre. That's what my guitar is tuned as well, D sharp. Sometimes C sharp as well. And as I dive into the song, I just lose track all the time and do crazy chromatic stuff and just do it by ear. Yeah, the last songs I was writing, I actually tried to stick to a certain key or a scale, but it didn't work out. And right now I'm writing a track for Alex and me, where Alex is going to do the vocals on. And I'm kind of fucking it up right now because there's so much, how do you say? Just a second. Transpositions in it. And on some spots it sounds totally off, and then there are spots in the song where it has like kind of Deepish Mode-esque feeling, if you know what I mean. They do this transpositioning too sometimes, and yeah, a little bit difficult for me.
All right, I want to loop back to that. Alex, what do you got?
Yeah, I don't. If you have an iPhone, there's an app called Pensato, and it's really handy for me because you can punch in a bunch of notes and it will tell you which keys they are included in. So it's a good way of maybe planning key changes. But I think it's iPhone only, unfortunately, and it costs money. But for myself, it was worth it. And I also have a question about kick drums, but I don't know if somebody else wants to add something to.
Go for it.
Key changes. Yes, I really like the sound of reverb on kick drums, but I'm worried that I muddy up my bass because I've heard that it can happen really easily. I try to slightly high-pass filter my reverb, so maybe the fundamental of the kick doesn't get muddied, but how much reverb can you get away with on kick drums?
Thank you. Adam, it's yours. Keep it short.
I'll keep it real short. When I was talking about layering before, that smack in the face, that's the only part of the kick drum that you should reverb. I'm going to say this from the club DJ's perspective. We fucking hate it when you reverb the kicks. That said, from the production side, I reverb that top layer of kicks just a little.
Thank you. Can I throw something in there as well? Gate your reverb. Yeah, gate it. Gate it like you're out of control, like you're madman. And play with that gate. It's good fun. And if you can, you might even automate that gate in such, so that it only hits it on the 1 and the 3 or something. But yeah, make that kick dance and make sure there's room to hear it. That's all I got on that. I'm gonna pass it over to Seth.
Yeah, I would just say what I do is I duplicate the kick drum and then just high pass the duplicate, and then put the reverb on that one, so that you can really control it then in your mix with how much volume you give it. It's a lot more sensitive, and then you're not really impacting your actual kick drum sound.
A good idea. Thanks, man. Did you want to add anything else, or did I just cut you off?
Me?
You.
I write everything in G minor. So, I don't know. It's just when I sit down at the piano, that's the key that always seems to come out. So, there you go. There's how I do it.
Can I, thank you. I will also say one thing on kicks as well, and that is that kicks are tricky because the initial plant of a kick, of an 808 style kick, not like a real beater going into a skin kick, starts high and drops. And during those microseconds of it dropping and hitting that thump, there's no sub. So, excuse me, if you walk to, I've mentioned this before, but if you're outside back in the old days when we used to go out, and you walk towards a club, you hear the kicking wah, 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 wah. It's not going dum, dum, it's going wah, wah. And you're hearing all the glasses and everything else in the club vibrate because that sub, as the kick is coming down to slam that sub, everything's vibrating. Like, literally, it's vibrating the walls and the glasses are vibrating. So you're hearing this wah, wah, wah. But as you get closer, you hear it going da, da, da. Because the kicks, that first instant of the beat, the kick is technically missing it. That sub thump is missing it. So as has been mentioned here before, and I'll go back to the sine wave, you might just use a sine wave as your kick, or a distorted sine wave, or a bit of a square wave or something that just goes boom, straight on that fucking kick, straight on the one. As soon as you hit that kick, it goes bang, and then you've got something else that's the attack. So layer 1 is that sub thump, and layer 2 is that attack. And if you do that sort of thing in your music, you can create some absolutely lovely mayhem. And, I love analogs and all that shit, but that's the problem with analog kick drums, is forever working around that issue for me. But, and I've found these kicks, like I've got two kicks that are my go-to kick nows, and they don't have that fall, they don't have that slope, they just go slam. I'm done talking about this, unless, I wanted to talk about keys. So one thing you can do with keys is just have everything drone in that key. You said E flat, was it? Have everything, Julius, have everything drone in E flat. Put everything in E flat and see what it sounds like. Your chorus might go up, or you might have a bridge before the chorus, going from verse, bridge, chorus. The bridge might be in something else. For example, G flat. Go up a minor third, and then come back down, and kick it around a bit more in that E flat. Oh no, you said C flat, didn't you? No, C sharp? What did you say it was? C sharp
and D sharp.
Okay, cool. So if you're in, I'll go with D sharp. So you're slamming that verse away in D sharp, and then the bridge comes up, and you might go into F sharp, because it's a minor third, and that's very industrial. Then you go back into the chorus, and it's in D sharp again. And it just keeps and then for the middle 8, you might do something totally different, like C sharp, or fucking A, or something, I don't know, G sharp. Ideas. But yeah, just keep it in that drone. And if you're doing something over a drone, then you can do harmonically almost anything you want. You can get away with murder.
Don't forget that Trent Reznor experimented with a lot of scales as well.
Yeah. So we leave that with you, Trent. No, that's good.
Trent is also a classically trained pianist.
Scales are actually a lot of good fun. And
they are.
There's a whole bunch of fun scales that you can experiment with. And if you want to listen to somebody who experiments a lot with scales, Bjork. Bjork usually, Radiohead's something else, but Bjork on her albums, there'll be a lot of cases where, okay, this one is in a Phrygian scale, this one is in Mixolydian scale, and it's basically starting in the key of C, but instead of starting on C, I'm going to start on the D. Now I'm going to start on the E, play all the white notes, because each one has a different feel. And interestingly, industrial music usually is all the white notes, but it starts on B. So it's got a really evil, dark feel to it. Evil, dark is good. I am done with talking about this unless somebody else wants to talk about this. And if not, I have a question I'd like to throw into the mix. Mark, finally.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, turn yourself up a bit.
I'm not super used to this new setup just yet.
We can hear you.
Okay, I'll just start talking towards the camera. But yeah, my other thing was I was just gonna do a brag. The only time I actually wrote a song from scratch, I didn't know what. I just threw notes at the board and whatever fit. Turns out I wrote an A-ignomatic.
A what?
A-ignomatic.
What the hell is ignomatic?
Scale.
I've never heard of an ignomatic scale.
Neither had I. I plugged into a website because I was just curious if I had hit a scale, and sure enough, it was pretty much like dead in A-ignomatic.
Ignomatic.
Yeah.
All right, I'll have to research
That's it.
that. That's great. That's cool. I love that. I have to research that. Thank you. Ignomatic. I've walked away with something today. Rob, what are you walking towards us with?
Experiment. Get one of these things if you have the time and the patience. It's the theory board, and it was a Kickstarter project, and it contains all of the scales in the universe, both individual keys and chords. Really good to experiment with for music making.
Excellent. Thank you. Also, a lot of synthesizers, you have the ability to tune and detune keys, so you can create your own scales or pre-existing scales, but this is getting into a really interesting rant, and I thank you for that. Alex, talk to me.
Well, one thing that's really, I think, really important with theory is that it's made to make sense of what people write and not to dictate what people have to write. So maybe it's a guide if you're looking for something that works, but I don't think it's something you should obsess over if you don't take it into account. Well, if you can just write. I think that's
Excellent.
good motto.
That sort of ties in. If you're finished, can I? And if anybody else wants to jump in, well, that was your chance. Something that I'm very interested to know about is how do you create music and keep going forwards when you're depressed as fuck? How do you, when you have lost the, when the horizon's gone and you're flying through clouds, either that might be mental clouds, and you've got to write, you have to output, what do you do?
For me, writing music is that escape from that.
Great. Thank you. Julius, or go?
Yeah, I think we have to distinguish here because you are talking about having to write music. I don't know if anyone else here has to write music because as for Brett, for me it is more of an escape actually. So I can't answer that, to be honest.
Okay, well, anyone, you're welcome to, reinterpret the question and answer it accordingly. I think Eric's hand was next. I can never tell. No, Alex's hand was next. All right, I'll go with Eric. You point like this, but I don't know who's there because everyone's moving. This is like Cube. And we keep moving. It's like the Brady Bunch from hell. Now that you put your hand down, Eric, I think it's you. Go. And when you did that, the cube moved again. Where are you now, man? I don't know.
I don't know where I am either. That's I deal with that a lot, and I think a lot of musicians and artists in general have something of an issue with this, and ways to cope with it. And like Julius mentioned, I don't. Music isn't my full-time job yet. I want it to be, but I don't have the pressure maybe to, like to produce and put the music out, to worry about getting money from it. So depending on, I mean, I don't know where I am with what's going on, but sometimes I can write depressed, and sometimes I make my best songs depressed, and other times I'm depressed and I don't feel like doing shit. And since I don't have to worry about making money from it and making a living doing it, I won't do music for a week or two. I don't feel like it. And like I said, since my base pay isn't that, I don't have to worry about it. As a full-time musician, I don't know. And when I make it as a full-time musician, I'll deal with it then, I guess. But yeah, so I mean, I'm both ways. Sometimes I won't do anything for a week or two because I think all my shit sucks and I don't feel like doing it. Or sometimes I'll sit down and write one of my favorite songs I've ever written before. It depends on what's going on.
Awesome, thank you. I'm going to jump in after Alexander, and just really quickly, I noticed you put in the comments over on Twitch about the whole tone scale. Listen to Debussy. If you like whole tone, listen to Claude Debussy. And then once you're done, I'm going to jump in. Alex, go.
I think I have to distinguish between playing music and messing around and just improvising or whatever, and actually working on tracks. Because for me it's really different. Because when I'm not feeling well or can't focus, I just don't work on tracks. I'm not a professional, and maybe that's a blessing, maybe that's a curse. If I'm not feeling well at all, one thing I do, and if I just can't focus on anything, I just lay my hands on the keyboard and see what I play, and not think about anything. That sometimes helps, and maybe I feel better then.
That's great, thank you. Okay, so firstly, the longest I've ever not made music was 5 years, and I fucking regret that. That's one of the only regrets I have in life. I have a lot of regrets, but that's a big fucking regret. Because of my job and because of everything else, I had achieved my dream job, and I fucking hated it, and I fucking hated it so much. Anyway, but that, the anger and everything that still scars me, is now in every single Angelspit lyric. I think that having a musical education is really important, because sometimes, you know, there are some bands and musicians who have created something based on this explosion of energy, not musicality. This is kind of hard for me to explain, and it's this magical moment of inspiration. The fucking bad thing about inspiration is its mood, which is for love, play, and cattle. You know who that is? You know who I just quoted? No, you don't. Yeah, that was a June quote. Anyway, it comes down to mood, and it's really important that you know musically what you are doing. That, for example, well, I always do these things where I go in a minor pentatonic, and it's always 1 1 1 minor 3 4 4 4 flat 2 1. That's the thing I always do. I'm saying as an example, so that in the future, when whatever that spark of anger or whatever that spark is has gone, because it will go, and another spark will come along. You don't get to choose when your sparks come. They just come. They choose you. You can fake it. Or you can at least pour the juice into the vehicle that'll get it kick-started again. You'll know that these combinations of notes are going to re-incite the emotion, beautiful, sad, happy, whatever emotion. And that's why I think it's really important to have a musical education. And it's important to know, to be able to analyze your music and go, I know why I did what I did. I don't even know why I said that. Rob, what you got?
Artists that I've worked with in the past produce their best pieces from depression, and a lot of the lyrics that they write are from the heart, and interpreting that feeling is what you connect with, and that's what makes it so good. So it may not be performing while you're depressed, but certainly lyric writing is really important.
Thank you. I want to circle back to that in a minute. Adam, go.
I think that's a great point, using it as an energy, use it as creative fuel. Like, different feelings are going to fuel different creativity. I consider myself to be an artist more than I consider myself to be a musician or anything else. And so music is one of the mediums that I work in. And so if I am not feeling it on music, then I'm probably feeling it on making something else, and so I will make something else. And if I feel like, if I feel like making something today, I'm going to make something today. If something is pushing itself in my brain and saying I need to be done, it needs to be done. That's kind of what happened with the record. It was like I sat down to start working on the record and woke up 8 months later with a record. As far as it goes, man, my opinion is that there's no one wrong way to make music. You can make music wrong all the different ways that you want and have fun with it. I mentioned the Tom and Jerry cartoon soundtracks in the chat there, but I'm like really, really serious. Listen to Scott Bradley's stuff. He is a master of the 12-tone system and an absolute master of the 12-tone system. There's no wrong way to make music if it feels right. If using a system like 12-tone and only being able to use one note before you use a note again, and to create the level of emotional content that Scott Bradley did with Tom and Jerry. He created motion, he created emotion, he created melody, extraordinary melodies with this system that so seriously, don't diss Tom and Jerry music. It's some of the most brilliant music you have ever heard on television. And go back and listen to it. And when you do listen to it, realize that there's no one wrong way to make music. You can make music wrong all the ways that you want.
Cool. Alex.
I just remembered there is a book from somebody who works at Ableton, but it hasn't anything to do with Ableton other than it's a DAW, and it's focused on people who write in DAWs, but it can be applied to people who write on paper. And it's a book about how to get unstuck if you're writing music. It's called Making Music, and it used to cost money, but you can download it for free at the moment. And it has multiple strategies from maybe different angles. If you can't start, if you can't finish, if you're stuck in the middle. And it has many strategies. Some contradict each other, but the idea is that you pick one and try to apply it and get out of your rut. I just put it into chat.
Thank you. And if you could throw that on the Twitch chat as well, that'd be bloody excellent. In fact, it's hollow. I'm going to get it. And then once you're done, I want to shoot my mouth off a bit. Boom. Go get him, Tiger. There you go. Thank you very much. Yeah, so there's also Oblique Strategies, which is by that guy who played all those EMS. Hang out with Bowie. Oblique Strategies is a similar idea where the card will say something totally random, or it's to inspire, and then you have to interpret it, and it's a great idea. Absolutely wonderful. Julius, I want to hear your voice.
I just wanted to quickly vent about the music industry and being an artist, especially being a musician. I hate the fact that you have to constantly release and create as an artist, if you rely on it, to survive. That's not how art should be done, in my opinion. And looking at the very famous band, Rammstein, who did, I don't know how many albums they made, I might be wrong, 9 or 10, I don't know. But the point is that they didn't release anything for 10 years because they are just that famous, they simply didn't need to. And had these 10 years to actually focus on their music and write it and polish it until they were fully satisfied with it. And that's how it should be done for everyone, not just for the most famous ones. But unfortunately, that's not the case, which sucks. I'm done.
Thanks. Yeah, well, I mean, like, this is something that I want you guys to think of, because obviously my ulterior motive is I want you to get to a point where music is subsidizing part or all of your income. Frank Zappa once said, music is the greatest hobby on earth and the worst profession. And I thoroughly agree. You've always got this thing over one shoulder. It's the DJs and the press staring over your shoulder, going in your mind, going, oh, I'm not going to play that. And on the other one, it's your audience saying, oh, I like your old stuff better than your new stuff. I don't like your music anymore. I've liked your music for 15 years, and I don't like your music anymore. I stopped listening. I went off your band. When people say that, it kills you. It absolutely ruins you. But, you know, you have to understand the beast, and you have to understand that, you know, it is what it is. And you can't, you know, you just can't let it get you down. But if you do, turn it into lyrics.
You're only talking about one or two people, though, Carl. I mean, you got more fans in the last 5 years, you know, where you are now with your own style as a single artist. You're doing a lot more just for yourself now, and growing, you know, popularity for you and for your sake and your sense of humor and your anger. Forget about the past. That's people in the past were expecting something different. You've changed. You've evolved.
Thanks, Rob. That does mean a lot. I want to do a Blipvert again soon, like an actual research. I'm researching nostalgia and how nostalgia is mainly triggered by music and smell, and how you can't fight it. There's some things visuals don't really hit nostalgia, but there's these specific senses that will trigger nostalgia, and it's got nothing to do with the quality of your music or art or whatever it is you're creating now. Excuse me. It has to do with the memories that person is being recalled. And you're going to fight with that. You are going to fight with that. And the big ones are music and perfume. Because every time you smell a lemon, man, I'm telling you, it'll take you back to your childhood.
And that's why we post turds, right?
Yes! I forgot what I was saying. Doesn't really matter though. What was I saying? Oh yeah, that's where that was going, and I really fucking appreciate you guys, and I am trying to get you guys ready for the road that you're on, and you're getting me ready for the road that I'm on, you know? The really good thing, and I absolutely agree, if I could have the luxury of only creating when I felt like it, I don't know how much music I'd make, and I don't know if it would be any good. I am concerned that it would be a wank, because I love wanking. You've never heard the music I write when I'm wanking. It's arty, farty, wanky shit. It's very, very wanky. And
put it on Patreon.
Maybe I could. If I did, it would, like, the jams that I'm doing are going down wank road, but they're engineering. There's a lot of thought and engineering that are going into those jams, but they are, you know, I'm trying to get that wank energy, which is big crazy chords and really weird fucking progressions and weird. And I am trying to to formulate it, to forge it into something that people are going to like and people want to listen to, because a part of my personal art ethos is I want to relay an emotion, a feeling. I want to evoke feeling and passion inside people. That's what my art wants to do. But I'm glad you brought up Patreon, because I'm very rarely inspired. Actually, I do get inspired and I write it down. But when I'm sitting at a monitor, I'm never fucking inspired. Never. So I will go into the books and all that other shit and pull out cool ideas. The really excellent thing about a Patreon is that it pushes you to create something every month. You must create. And by exercising those parts of your brain, they start outputting. And, you know, you're not obligated to release everything. If you put something on the Patreon and you listen back to it and go, that was crap, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And there have been a few. Then if I'm going to release them, I'll put them on a B-side of a single. But, you know, and that's another really cool thing as well, is that when you're kicking out ideas and you're just trying to get them out, you know, you might have 2 years worth of material. That's 24 songs, and I'm going to put out a 12-track album. Cool. Half those tracks are going to go. And the others are going to come rarities, or I'll give it to my friend and they can use it as a track to open their, and I wouldn't do that. I was going to say a track to open their Twitch gaming thing, but I'd write him something special for that. But I'm talking out of my ass now. My point is that I wish I could do this thing by one of the greatest musicians of all time, Wolfgang Amadeus, and Beethoven, and they have something in common. Is the most biggest workaholic in music ever. His name was Schikaneder. He discovered both of them. He was a guy in Viennese opera, and after he helped Mozart with his OD, he then found this guy named Mozart and helped him with his nervous breakdown. But they would sit down and they would plow it, because yes, they had king and royalty and all that bullshit on their back, but they just plowed it out. I'm just talking so much shit. I am actually formulating something at the moment to do something that is more fun. And as I was saying before, the song I just put on Patreon is kind of a goodbye track. That it sounds really bad when I say that. That I'm wanting to push into boundaries that I was exploring in a band called Jekyll Switch, and they're very, 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 very rough, very punk, very fucking rough. And I hope I can just have the nous to keep doing it. I'm going to shut up because I asked you guys to stop me when I was prattling, and I just prattled and you didn't stop me. Some fucking friends you are. But you'll be really quick to send me a poo in the mail.
Carl.
Too late now. And I have the mute button. Go.
Sorry, I didn't realize that was one of those times I was supposed to be interrupting you. You know, like I'm a little shell shocked now to interrupt you when I should. I don't. No. So I wanted to start out from kind of the beginning of your rant there, that you were saying that that it hurts when somebody says, I don't like what you're doing musically anymore. And I was like, why? Like, so what, man? Like, so what? You don't like what I'm doing. I like what I'm doing musically right now. I don't care if you like it. I mean, like, I want people to like it, but if you don't like it, hey, okay, you're not on the same ride as me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't like everything that I hear, but I can appreciate it. I can appreciate what's going into it. I mean, I'll give anything a chance anyway, but I mean, there's music I just don't like, and it's not because it's bad music, it's because I don't like it, and fuck me, that's not the artist's problem.
Yeah, I didn't use thanks, I'm just interrupting too. I didn't use their exact words. Their exact words were really shitty.
But you know, that's the thing is, like, you know, how do I say this? Like, I feel you, Julius, man, on the whole thing about like kind of catering to the fans and putting stuff out and blah blah blah. And I feel you about the DJs over the shoulder, because we always want something fresh. and we're always going to be playing something fresh. But like, you know, no, why? No, take all the damn time you need to write your songs. If you're one of those people that puts out tracks after tracks after tracks, great, good on you. Do it. That's not how everybody is. Leonard Cohen said it would take him 30 years to write a song sometimes because he just hasn't finished living enough to write the song. And so however long it takes you to do it is how long it takes you to do it. If you know, like, if you are trying to do music for a living, then yeah, you're gonna have a boss over you that says crank this shit out. Like, write jingles like Barry fucking Manilow did. You know, like, find the career spans, right, that you can work in music and do stuff musically, but you don't have to feel pressured to make your own art. Do something for somebody else, right? Do collaborations and you know, the fucking mechanicals on it or whatever. Do session, be a fucking DJ, do weddings for 28 years, which, by the way, will give you an extraordinary sense of how people process nostalgia over generations and generations. And if you really want to get into that, Carl, we'll talk to me about that. If you really want to dig into that with me, let's not do it on here, because I will fucking run down that rabbit hole. Like,
cool.
I will run down that rabbit hole. Let us talk about music and nostalgia and how brains work and that stuff.
And why does everybody just turn to jelly when they put on Take On Me? Why?
I will explain that to you.
Yeah, please do, at a later stage. Adam, I interrupted you, interrupting me, interrupting you, which is actually a Massive Attack lyric. Great song. Go.
Yeah, beautiful stuff. No, seriously, if you want me to talk about why everybody loves Take On Me, I will do it, but it will take a while.
Yes.
But it is always about being in that place in that time. And Take On Me has particular
Adam! No, not now. We have a script. We're sticking to the script.
It's always about being in that place in that time.
All right.
And the soundtrack to it. When I'm talking to wedding clients, that's something that I ask them. I say, I want to know what songs you sang with your college friends on road trips or whatever. I want to know. And you know, so one of the other things that happens is that people kind of get stuck into the music that they listened to in high school and college, and they don't really evolve past that point.
Hold on, I'm sorry. I gotta.
There's a box behind you, Adam, on the left-hand side. Is that? If you look behind you, what's that? What's that box behind you on the wall? Yeah, that one. So, Carl, when you're playing live, right? Yeah, when you're playing live, it's just like you're performing live on a gig, right?
Yeah.
So when you're doing known sets of songs that your fans enjoy,
yeah,
nobody's telling you to shut the fuck up when you decide to express creative freedom and do something completely impromptu, ad lib, in between known tracks, just like a lead guitarist plays a lead. They don't rehearse that shit. They just go nuts. They just enjoy themselves. And for people to be ridiculing you for being creative and playing stuff live, it doesn't matter whether it's better or worse than what you've done in the past. You have the creative freedom to do whatever the fuck you want. And if you're performing live, nobody's telling you what to do. You just go be you. There's no rehearsal. You're not trying to finesse it. Just go and sick with an instrument. If you start smashing a moog and going ballistic, let people complain about you smashing instruments. It's not your problem. You're there to create. You're there to enjoy yourself just as much as anyone in the audience. And your expression is your expression. Your true fans will really enjoy that ad-lib live moment. That's the reality.
Yeah, that's I see your hand, Eric. Thanks again, Rob. Adam, you can tell Rob to fuck off at any point because he pulled a beauty on you. It's all right.
No way, man. Anytime Rob speaks, I want to hear what he has to say. So.
I'll tell you later. It's
just
good.
Being a bastard.
He's
Adam,
being a bastard. It was a good play too.
Well, the thing is that's being a bastard with a lot of wisdom behind it, though.
Yeah. So, I what Rob just said, I want everybody to take away with it, because what I have learned is that if you do something and you are enjoying it, there's a high chance everybody else is going to enjoy it as well, which is tying into, I think, what I passive aggressively trying to juice out of this session is that what do you do when you're not enjoying it, but it's got to get made? Because mixing's not fun. It's not. Unless you like mixing, good for you. And I'm going to keep your thought, Eric. That initial moment of inspiration, it's great fun. But then stretching that song out and, now this key is out of this key and everything, that's not fun. So you're problem solving. Like the song's this beautiful thing and you're trying to pull it out through the universe's song birthing canal and trying to make it, and the fact that you see the song there in the universe and it's yours, that's it. That's the moment of inspiration. It feels so good. But then you have to pull the fucking thing through. Then you have to, it's the 99% perspiration where you go through, wow, this sucks, therefore I suck, therefore I hate everything I do, everyone's going to hate me, everyone's going to laugh at me. We all know, because every single one of us feels this way. So I guess the point I'm trying to passive aggressively make, for want of a better term, is when you are at that point and you will need a formula or an education or something that you can fall back on to fake it, to fake having fun, and to fake putting music into your, to put fun and energy into your music. Because when you are so depressed that you can't mix anymore, you can't think what word rhymes with cat. I don't want to use those words because I've used them 1,000 times and da-da-da-da-da-da. When you are at that point and you've got to get your shit done, fake it. And mathematics and education are going to fake it. And I'm seeing, Diana said brain puzzles. I just bought a book of 500 cryptographs, and I sit down. I have to do them every night to keep my brain fresh, because I am going through a hell of a fog right now, and I know that so many of us are. So, and these sessions are incredible because there's this balance of science, art, and mathematics, and then, like I think what Rob was hinting at, there comes a point where you have to lose your fucking shit. Just lose your fucking shit, but make sure you record it, because something really cool might be happening. So everybody, I want to thank you just for this. It sounds like I'm finishing there. I'm not. I'm going to throw it. I think, Julius, I think you were up there first. Go. Oh, okay. It's always Eric, man. I'm sorry. I'm always... Eric, go.
Yeah, I would like to add just to the, we as artists need to evolve. And if you're making the same song over and over and over again, there's no fucking fun in that. I would shoot myself. Like, we need to evolve. We need to create new art. We need to do new things. And if your fans or people aren't down with that, I mean, they're not down. You can't force people. But, like, I really think they should all at least respect that. And, it's like the old saying, if you have nothing nice to say, don't say it at all. You don't have to tell the artist, I like your old stuff better, your shit sucks now. Like, you don't have to say that. If you don't like it, you don't like it. Just keep your mouth shut. Let the artist evolve. Let the artist do what they want to do. It's just so sad when you see, like, bands come up and, like, they make that one big album, and then everything from there, their fan base compares everything they do to the one goddamn album. And it's like, they're not going to make that album over and over and over again. That's boring. Like, evolve with the band. If you love the band and you love the music in any art form, evolve with them. Go on their journey with them.
Yeah. You can't expect someone to live in the Tate mansion for the rest of their life trying to get off heroin. Because that motherfucker's got to grow up. And so many people don't let him. And I'm going to throw... I see you, Julius and Adam. This is my warning to you, is that people are always going... The follow-up album, the second album. Oh, it has to... Is it going to be as good as the first album? Remember, you had your whole career up to this point to write that first album. Then you have about 18 months to write that second album. Don't forget that. And sure, maybe it is a good idea to take some time off and write that album, but don't fucking waste your time. be prepared for these things. You are building an audience, and unfortunately there is no sting as hard as your audience saying, man, what you write now is drivel disco shit. You know, they're gonna say some people, a lot of people are fucking awesome, and they stand by you, and I am blessed to have you guys. I am blessed. But just be ready, and never take a review to heart. Never take a review to heart. In fact, don't even read them. Just don't fucking read them. Because if you get, I'm sorry, Julius, this is your time. Just let me be quick. If a review comes in and they go, this is the album of the year, it's amazing, and you go, oh, I did it, that's a problem. Because in a couple of albums' time, when you write the worst album of the year, it's going to kill you. Don't let them alter your choices or opinions. Remember, the most important thing you have as a musician, as an artist, is your choices and your opinions and where it is that you want to go. That's what you're selling, because you are surrounding yourself with people who all also like your stuff. And that fucking that opinion and choice goes from what note I'm going to wear, what the album's going to look like, all the way through to how much compression am I putting on my vocals. Am I putting too much compression on my vocals? I don't know, but it is time to change shit up, because you got to where you are because you're changing shit up. I've ranted so much right now. Are we talking about a certain person? No, not really. I've had a lot. I've had a lot of people say shit to me, and it's just what I've learnt. It's really hard when you've got someone who's been your fan for like 5 albums, and then they go, oh, I don't like it anymore. I think you're crap, man. I think you've lost the point. Maybe you should give up and become an accountant. I've had that. But I don't want to talk about this, or unless you want me to.
You got to produce the beige album.
Yes. Well, I'm doing the black album now. Maybe I should do the beige album. A whole bunch of fuck you albums. Julius, give me love.
Always. Referring to your problem, Carl, my advice might be cheap, and it's always the same, but I think one needs to find ways to recharge, like to treat yourself. Leave the studio behind. Go work out, go meet people, not just your wife or your best friend, just meet in a group. It is something I recently I recently noticed. I didn't go out for a while with a larger group, and this weekend I did, and being an introvert, actually, it did so much good. I was actually surprised, and it recharged my batteries a lot. So maybe it's something you could try as well. And yeah, maybe a good piece of chocolate is a treat as well sometimes. I don't know. For me, it is.
That's good. Thank you. Alex, hit me with your rhythm stick.
I just want to second Julius. Meeting people is really important. I just yesterday went to a goth DJ night for the first time this year, and although I felt awkward because I didn't have anyone to go with, but it just helps. Like, today was such much better day than the week previously, so going out helps.
With you next time.
Cool. Yeah, I think everybody is looking forward to some form of social interaction again. I think, did I see your hand go up, Brett?
Yeah.
Shoot.
One thing that helps me, I guess, I'm going to say helps grow me. It helps add thickness to the armor sometimes, I guess, but I'll regularly engage with people I don't agree with, and I'll try to treat them civilly. And in a lot of ways, it feels kind of like banging your head against the wall. It does a lot to pull you out of your own shell. And You can do that on a variety of topics about a variety of things. Politics is easy. It's also a distraction from music. It also adds fuel to the fire. So that ends up being one of those things that I'll pick on regularly. Picking, not fights, but having discussions about religion and such, that's another taboo I'll readily touch on with friends, family, and whomever is willing to play. It's one of those, it's as long as you're able to do it as an exercise where you're forcing yourself literally to try to be civil and try to see the world through another person's point of view for at least that time frame, then I found that it helps overall pull yourself out of your own headspace. It might still piss you off. It might not be comfortable. It might be the hard way through, but it'll get you there. That's all.
Oh, thank you. That's lovely. Does anybody else have anything they want to share or anything they want to question or are we going to go and watch MTV TV? Yeah, we're going to go watch MTV TV. And remember that I believe Space Couch is on in an hour? Yes, it is. If anybody has the link to Space Couch, God, I suck so badly. To put the link to Space Couch in the description. And we're going to go to Space Couch later. But first, MTV TV. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being part of this. I hope you take all of the stuff that's gone away as encouragement. That some of the waters that you go through as an artist are awesome. Some are not. But you just have to keep going through the waters. And always know that there are others that have been through or are going through those waters. So vent, talk to someone, and get them, help you get them out of it. Diana, let's raid. Let's go to MTV TV and get some fucking non-stop insanity. Bye. Bye. Bye.